Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the August monthly call. This is Misty Woods, and I will be conducting today's call. It looks like we have pretty much everybody ready and joined. I don't think we'll have a whole lot of people today due to the fact that a lot of SFAs are returning to school, so I'm sure they're busy doing other things, but that is the reason why we post the recording and the slides on Louisiana Fit Kids for those people that could not attend. So let's get started. So on today's call, we have a few things. Some things are going to be some reminders, while other things are going to be new. So first thing we'll go over is some SSO reminders for those that participated in SSO, some final rule reminders with which we've gone over the last couple of calls that became implemented on July 1st, some USDA updates, the legislative updates, some things that we need to talk about regarding the HMI awards. We'll go over a few of the important slides from the 25-26 NSLP application training. We'll review the most recent memos. We'll talk about some upcoming trainings. We'll talk about the 2024 equipment grant, and then also we'll talk about the Louisiana Trade of the Week. All right, so first let's talk about SSO. So if an SFA offered the SSO beyond June 30th, that new application or waiver, like we call it, must be submitted for each site that operated in July or August, since July 1 started a new school year, and the 25-26 application is open for those that need to submit that SSO application for those 2 months. So if the site normally receives severe need or has that menu certification, which everybody does have that performance-based reimbursement, then those rates continue during those SSO operations. So if you operated in May and June in SSO, you're receiving those 24-25 school year reimbursement rates. And during the month of July and August, SFAs will receive the new, which is the 25-26 school year reimbursement rates. So again, we talked about the final rule on the last couple of calls. So we're going to go over it again just to make sure everybody is aware. So these changes from this final rule became effective on July 1st of 2025. So the final rule establishes the following added sugar limits in school lunch and breakfast starting in July 1. So it's going to be product-based limits starting this school year. Breakfast cereals may have no more than 6 grams of added sugar per dry ounce. Yogurt may have no more than 12 grams of added sugars per 6 ounces. And flavored milk may have no more than 10 grams of added sugars per 8 fluid ounces. So the next thing we talk about is NSLP after-school snacks. The final rule aligns the NSLP after-school snack meal pattern requirements with the CACFP snack meal pattern requirements. The rule does not change requirements for after-school snacks served to preschoolers, so those existing requirements served to preschoolers remain in effect. So CACFP required snacks to include 2 of the following 5 components. You have your fluid milk, your vegetables, your fruits, your grains, and your meat alternate. So the main thing here is that grain-based desserts may not be used to meet the grain requirement, and we'll go over that in the next couple of slides, specifically about the grain items from Exhibit A. So here is the snack meal pattern for CACFP, which now aligns, will be the same thing for NSLP after school snack. So you must serve unflavored milk to children that are 2 to 5 years of age. You may serve unflavored or flavored milk to children ages 6 and older. And again, like I just said, grain-based desserts may not be used to meet the grain requirement, and the grain items from Exhibit A with those superscripts 3 and 4 are no longer creditable for NSLP after-school snack. And again, I'm referring to the Exhibit A from the Food Buying Guide, which on the next slide, I'm going to have a snippet from. So here's the snippet of the food buying guide for Exhibit A. So anything basically that is in red are not creditable in NSLP after school snacks anymore. So when we talk about meal modification, the final rule also changed who can write medical statements for those meal modifications. So now, in addition to the state licensed healthcare professional, it also permits registered dietitians to write medical statements to request meal modifications on behalf of those students with disabilities. Another thing that came effective from the final rule is the substitutions of vegetables for fruits at breakfast. So schools that choose to substitute vegetables for fruit at breakfast 1 day per week may offer any vegetable, including a starchy vegetable. But schools that choose to substitute vegetables for fruit at breakfast on 2 or more days per week are required to offer vegetables from at least 2 different vegetable subgroups. And I have 2 memos here linked, USDA memos linked on this slide for more information regarding that. So let's talk about Buy American, which is also part of the final rule. We've talked about this several times before as well. So USDA has established in regulations a new threshold for school food authorities that use these exceptions for Buy American. And the limit on the percent of total commercial food costs from non-domestic foods will be phased in over 7 years. And this phased-in approach will allow schools to gradually adjust to the new requirement and will allow USDA to continue to collect that data on the use of those Buy American exceptions. So beginning this school year, so school year 25-26, the non-domestic food purchase caps will be at 10%. So non-domestic food purchases must not exceed that 10% of the total annual commercial food cost. So on this slide is the Buy American Exceptions Tracking Standard Form. Now, this is an optional template that school food authorities can use to document the use of the exceptions to purchase non-domestic foods under the Buy American provision. This is the template that USDA has provided, so we're going to allow SFAs to use this. It's not saying you have to use this template, but you still have to be able to track all the information that is required on this template. The link on this slide will take you to the USDA website where you can find the tracking form, which is under the resources material. This tracking form has also been added to the CMP website. And the purpose of the form is to basically track both the exceptions and the cost related to those non-domestic product purchases. So school food authorities will enter that data related to those non-domestic product costs into that tracker tab. And then that exceptions summary tab will help you calculate the percentage of cost from non-domestic products within a specified time frame. As of right now, per USDA, there is more guidance to come regarding when we are on, conducting administrative review. What are we looking at in addition to the tracker? So right now we're asking that you make sure that you at least are completing that tracker of all your non-domestic purchases until we receive more in-depth guidance as to if anything addition needs to be kept as well. So again, this is kind of about documentation and reporting, but it's very vague. SFAs must document the use of exceptions to purchase non-domestic products and must be able to produce this documentation as needed. So again, more detailed guidance is to come as to any other specific documentation, but right now we are asking to make sure that everyone is tracking it. You don't need any type of pre-approval or waiver from us to use the exception, meaning you can buy non-domestic. You don't need any type of waiver, but you have to track those purchases. When SFAs purchase a product found on the non-availables articles list, this must be included on the tracker for the purposes of accurately tracking those total non-domestic costs. So even if you know the item is identified as being non-domestic because it's on that non-availables articles list, you still have to track those. So for those that are concerned about whether they're going to meet that cap or not, You can refer to USDA memo that's posted and linked on this slide to the Buy American accommodation process for the current school year for 25-26 school year. So if you are seeking a temporary accommodation from the Buy American threshold requirement, you should complete and submit this form. It's called the SFA accommodation plan that's attached in the memo. We also have it on our website as well. State agencies must report. So like when you submit something to us, we have to report to our regional office on a quarterly basis the total number of accommodations requests that we receive, the total number that we were able to approve, and then the types of products that SFAs are requesting the accommodation for. So we will continue to provide technical assistance to those SFAs that are submitting for those accommodations until you're able to demonstrate that you are able to meet that requirement. So I do suggest that if anyone is unsure if they'll be able to meet that, that requirement, that you submit that form to be safe. So this is what the form looks like. And once you download the form and complete the form, you're going to submit it to the general email address, the Child Nutrition Programs at la.gov. Again, it's been added to our website. We review the forms that we receive, and we try to do it in as much of a timely manner as possible, and we may approve the request. We will notify you, though, if we need additional information or if we have questions, and then we will notify you in writing if it's approved. And again, we will continue to provide technical assistance until you are able to demonstrate that you are able to meet that requirement. Let's talk about USDA updates, which is not much. So we have finally received the 25-26 school year reimbursement rate. We received them on July 24th, and the memo has been put on the CNP website. We'll go over it in a few minutes as well. So in regards to the 2025 equipment grant, we are being told that there is money. However, it's being told that it's being delayed. USDA stated will most likely be closer to the end of this calendar year. So normally we have it by now. So we're being told probably to expect allocations closer to the end of the calendar year. We have not received any updates on civil rights and justice for all posters. The last we heard is that they still have not received clearance to print any new posters. So we do not have any new posters available. We still have the ones, I'll call it the green and white with the building on it. Those are the only ones that we still have. There is a new non-discrimination statement on the USDA website. However, there has been no official guidance received from USDA. So we were told verbally by our regional office that we can move forward with updating our forms using the all other programs non-discrimination statement found on USDA's website, which I have a link here. But again, we are still waiting official guidance from USDA before making any additional changes. So if you're using the one that you were using last school year, you were okay. If you are using the one that is on the current USDA website, you were okay. We are told by USDA during this time to not issue any findings regarding any things to do with non-discrimination statements until further guidance is received from USDA. So again, you are good to go if you use what you were using last year, or if you chose to move forward and use what is currently on the website. We won't be issuing findings regarding that at this time. Okay, so we talked about the legislative update during the last monthly call. There really is no update besides one thing. We talked about how Senate Bill 117 was vetoed by the governor, but that Senate Bill 14 was signed into law on June 27th. And the one change is that whenever it was finalized, they did change the effective date. It was supposed to be 27-28 school year. The finalized published is 28-29 school year. And on the next slide is all the things that the prohibited ingredients. So we do have an extra year to get all of this sorted out. Okay, Healthy Meals Incentives Awards. So USDA is in the process of updating that awardee map on the HMI website. And in previous USDA administration, USDA staff would send out the awardees list monthly to the regional office and to the state agencies. However, with the new administration, USDA has not been approved to send out those monthly lists. USDA is hoping to receive approval to update the awardee map soon. So we actually contacted them and they were able to provide us with a list of the awardees in Louisiana through June 30th, but they did say that many applications were received in that last week of June and that they were going to be reviewed in July and that they should be notified on August 1st if they have any additional awardees. So currently we have quite a few that submitted and received an award. And again, if your name is not on here and you submitted an application, they said they were processing them and you probably would have been awarded or been notified sometime at the end of last week. So a little sad news for those of you that did receive an award. The USDA Fall 2025 Healthy Meal Summit is transitioning from an in-person event to a virtual conference to expand access and participation nationwide. I know several of you were looking forward to taking that trip, but now they're changing it to virtual. USDA is finalizing the updated details and will share more information soon, including that guidance on registration, and a formal memo from USDA is forthcoming. All right, so let's go over a few slides from the 25-26 school year NSLP application. So for those of you that have not heard, the website is open for all SFA sponsors to complete their 25-26 school year application. The forms can be accessed on the CNP website. Very good thing to point out here is that the deadline for submitting this application is August 31st, 2025. So you must complete this renewal application by the deadline in order to be able to claim meals for August. So you must have a submission date that falls in August in order to be able to claim August meals. So the required forms are as followed. You have your requirements, your policy checklist, your Schedule A, collection procedures, collection officials, and income and expenses. One thing to note is that SFAs do not complete labor expenses anymore, and only new SFAs complete the menu certification section on the forms. So if you have any questions or you need any additional assistance, please contact us at the state agency. Another thing to note is some information on some of the forms within that application will populate into other forms on that application. So sometimes it's good that you go in that order so that when that information populates into the other forms, it's very helpful if you do it in that order. So the requirements that I just mentioned consists of 4 sections. You have your CNP permanent agreement, which is the main reason why we need applications submitted in August, because it shows that you have a permanent agreement on file for the school year. The program year agreement, the SAM.gov verification, and the CN data sharing agreement. So all 4 sections of this form must be completed by the head of the organization or the authorized representative of your organization before entering data into the Schedule A. So again, this needs to be completed first. The policy checklist is basically a list of the essential policies and the current year prototype forms. So for continuing SFAs, it will be used to renew the agreement with the state of Louisiana for participation in the school food service program. It contains 6 questions. So it first asks you, is the program pricing or non-pricing? The second one is the public release, and that is for pricing systems only. the income eligibility guidelines for free and reduced price meals, free and reduced price meal documents, that's for pricing only, your menu options, and your audit requirements. So then you have next is the Schedule A, which has 5 parts. You have the sponsor meal info, the documents and certifications, the site participation list, your site meal information, and severe need eligibility. So under the Schedule A in the sponsor meal info section, it has several things in there. It has your average meal cost, your student breakfast and lunch charges, your other meal charges, after school snack charges, if you do after school snacks. It asks about the food service management company, if you use that, a section that's just for RCCIs, the type of software, or if you use software, your paid lunch equity, and the CEP participation. So under the documents and certifications in Schedule A, it includes your SAM.gov registration, your unpaid meal charge policy, your SFA procurement code of conduct certification, your SFA procurement procedures certification, your SFA higher threshold certification, and then your wellness policy, as well as your HACCP. So in the past, you actually had to check that you had it and submit that documents. Now you only are testing that you have it, but you must have that documentation available when we come out for either a TA visit or administrative review and things like that. So just because you are not having to attach it here, you must still have that available and for anyone to check at any time. So for the SAM.gov registration, you're going to enter in the SAM.gov ID and enter in the expiration date. You will also need to attach the proof of registration is in good standing. So please check to make sure that the document attached for the SAM shows it has an active date, because if it's expired, the application cannot be processed until a new document is received. So when we're processing this application, if we see something that is not active, we will be contacting you for another either another attachment, or if something's not right with it, we won't be able to process it. This is another thing that's important too, the SFA higher threshold certification. So if the SFA chooses to self-certify, you have to do this annually. So in this section, if you choose no to decline that using that higher threshold, or you're going to choose yes if you want to use the higher threshold. So if you choose yes, then you have to choose what option that you qualify for. And again, we have the memo, it's called SPO2 2022, that has the information about the higher threshold for micro purchases, and it's also linked on the application itself. This was something new that started last year. So as it's stated in that memo that's linked, program operators choosing to self-certify must prepare and include a justification for that choice. The self-certification must include a justification, a clear indication of the threshold, and the supporting documentation of any of the following. So if you chose that you are low risk on your audit, if you have an annual internal risk assessment to identify, mitigate, and manage financial risk, or if you're a public institution, a higher threshold consistent with state law. So that is your 3 choices. If you choose yes, or one of the yes options, you must provide the threshold, which the max for Louisiana is 30,000. Federal is 50, but max for Louisiana is 30,000. And again, you have to have that justification and supporting documentation. So for example, if you chose the qualification that you're a low risk for audit, then you would need to attach that proof from your audit. And as a reminder, Louisiana has a state law for higher thresholds. So if you use that third option, the memo for public institutions has already been attached to that documentation. But again, this is only for public institutions. So on Schedule A, under the site participation list, you will have all the sites within your SFA listed. All current active sites will have a green check mark. Any inactive sites will have a red X. And at the bottom of the list, there will be a total of active and inactive. The list will also include the site code, the kitchen manager, the operating days, the meals served, and the meal service information that was entered in under each site on that meal site info section. So under this site meal info section, it will provide the site name, the address, the racial and ethnic data. It also provides that if the site is eligible for free snack and severe need breakfast. And this is also where you check off the box if this particular site will not be participating for the current school year. So if you are on here and you see that your address is wrong or something is not right, please contact us so that we can double check to make sure whether it's an issue that is not matching in leads or if it's something that's potentially wrong in our system. So rather than just clicking through it, if you see something that is or seems incorrect, please contact us so that we can look into it. So this is also something that was new last year and we're continuing it for this year. It's under the site meal info and it's about the operating at multiple location. So the question is, does this site operate at more than one location? And this is when you have one site name, but you actually have more than one physical location. And we had this issue arise when we were going out on administrative reviews where a particular site was chosen for a review. And when we came on site, there was actually another physical site location that we weren't even aware of. So in this scenario, the SFA would need to enter the additional location details to include the school name, the address, city, parish, and grade levels. So again, this is only if you have one site name, but you have multiple site locations. So also under that site meal info section is the school operating hours. And this section wasn't always mandatory, but now it is mandatory due to the expanded learning potential that people can possibly qualify for. So the next section under the school operating hours is for the expanded learning time. So this section will only be used to determine if snacks can be served before the end of the school day. So as a reminder, you must operate a minimum, or a school must operate at a minimum of 7 hours of instruction time in order to qualify for expanded learning. And there are 2 memos about it. That's memo 22-171 and memo 23-137 about expanded learning for after school snacks. So if we see on here that the start time of the snack is before the end of the school operating hours, we will have to question you to ensure that it does meet the expanded learning time. So for collection procedures section, this form allows you to create multiple points of service collection procedures. You can provide details about the procedures and designate schools or facilities that use them. The initial page is a list of all the existing procedures for each meal, breakfast, lunch, and snack if you have snack. This list does not contain any procedures until you create them, allowing you to create as many or as few as you need. However, each meal service must be assigned at least one collection procedure for each meal service on each site submitted on your Schedule A. The procedure must describe how and where a site counts each reimbursable meal, how do you collect funds, and the location of the point of service. Also, the number of collection procedures can vary based on whether you're a CEP school or if you're not a CEP school. The meal service at each site, so if you have breakfast, if you have lunch, or if you have after school snack, the complexity of your point of service, and whether the site has alternate meal service options such as like grab and go or breakfast in the classroom. The collection procedures that you currently have in your system do roll over from year to year, and you can submit the same procedures used in previous years if there's no updates, or required as well to create new or edit those existing procedures. So just check the ones that you currently have and add or edit to make sure that you in line for the current school year. So the collection officials section is where you enter in and provide that information on who's your determining official, who's the pre-verifying official, and the verifying official, as well as the hearing official. If you choose to designate your kitchen managers for each site, there is a box that you can check off for that, for the determining officials. So the income and expense. So this section consists of page 1, which is your income and reimbursement. Page 2, which is your expenses, such as your food used and labor and benefits. Page 2, the second page, or C, D, and E of page 2, is about your equipment, direct cost, indirect cost. Page 3 is your net cash resources on June 30th. And page 4 is your allowable operating balance. And then you also have a review tab that you can click on. So the information entered into this form is for the previous program year. So SFAs are now going to be entering in the income and expenses for 24-25 school year. This is the only form that you enter in prior year's information. All the other forms you enter in current year, but your income and expenses is prior year information. So you enter in the dollar value as reported in your systems report, but you don't have to use any kind of dollar signs or comments like that. You just put in the numbers and then you put actually, a point for your like cents. Text boxes that are grayed out cannot be edited. These fields have been populated from other forms like we talked about. The computer will calculate all the values in that total column. And please note that you can refer to the Louisiana Accounting and Uniform Governmental Handbook, we call it the LAF Handbook, for more information on the income and expense codes that are being used in the form. So one thing to note that's different from in prior years is the allowable operating balance on page 4. So RCCIs do not complete this section on the form, but the CNP site's going to calculate and populate this information into this page. The CNP website determines if a corrective action plan is needed. A corrective action plan is needed if net cash resources exceeds the calculated 6-month average expenses. So here's where to notice the change. Federal regulation states that it's 3 months. However, we have been approved for 6 months of operating expenses. The corrective action plan should include how and when the funds will be used. So those allowable purchases. And I'll show you what it looks like next. So again, as stated previously, the CNP website will determine if a corrective action plan is needed. The excess net cash resources amount will be listed. And if a corrective action plan is needed, SFAs will enter in their spend down plan into the application by clicking on that add item button, and you're going to enter in estimated costs to spend those excess funds. So in this screenshot on the screen, it looks like they have access to $48,166.64 that they need to spend down. So once you click on the add the item, you're going to add the item description, the unit, the estimated cost, and the time frame that you plan to spend this. As you add the items, the amount of the excess remaining will begin to decrease. So after adding items until the excess remaining reaches 0, that's what you're going to keep going until you get down to 0. If no spending plan items are entered, there will be an error message on the submit form page. And if there are items listed on your spend down plan, but the estimated costs don't cover the total amount of the excess cash, then you will also get an error message to appear. So make sure you are spending at or above the actual excess amount that you need to spend down. So once you complete all those forms, you're going to go and you're going to select Submit Forms. So all the forms you started will appear in the list. If the checkbox next to the form is enabled, you can submit the form by clicking the box next to the form. A green check will appear. If an error message appears and the box is disabled where you can't click it, this form is not ready for submission. So you will see the message at the bottom that says submission of NSLP form is not permitted at this time. And under that will be a list of items that remain to be completed. That's going to be appear under that. If the form must be completed for each school or facility, the items that remain to be completed will also be listed by site. If you still receive the submission of the form is not permitted at this time message, you will have checked all the boxes for the forms listed, and then means you have not started on a required form. So it means basically it could tell you where either you haven't started on a form or it's that form's incomplete. Forms only appear in the list after they have been started. So if you did not start, let's say, collection procedures, it's not going to show up on this form. It's not going to show up in the end, but it won't let you submit because you didn't start that form. So again, you have to go back and complete all the forms. So here's just a screenshot of an application that's not being able to be submitted at this time. It has a lot of things that need to be corrected before it can be submitted. So once you submit the forms, it goes to staff members here. We have to review it for completeness and accuracy. Your agency will be contacted if there are changes or updated that needs to happen before we can approve. And after your application is complete, we're going to approve it. And then an approval letter will be sent to the superintendent and authorized representative via email. So just please note that the application does go through 3 levels of reviewers. So sometimes it can take up to 2 weeks to process and receive approval, especially if there are a lot of issues or if it's a very large school district. So that is why it's important that you submit your application by the due date to allow time for staff to process and approve. And again, SFAs cannot submit claims until the application is submitted and approved. As long as it's in a submitted status by August 31st, you are okay to be able to submit August claims. Doesn't necessarily have to be approved by August 31st, but you have to have submitted it to us. Okay, so let's talk about memos. First memo, well, actually, we have several memos to go over. We have several USDA memos to go over today as well. So the first memo is a USDA memo, and it's on the reimbursement of off-site meal consumption. So the purpose of this USDA memo is to provide clarification to state agencies and SFAs that are operating NSLP and school breakfast on reimbursement for meals consumed or served off-site. So this memo does supersede the FNS Instruction 786-8 Revision 1, which was called Reimbursement for Off-Site Meal Consumptions. The Richard Russell National School Lunch Act and the Child Nutrition Act of 1966 require that meals reimbursed under the programs are to be served in school or school-related premises. So that FNS Instruction 786-8 Revision 1 stated that meals served or consumed off-site could only be reimbursed if children were participating in school functions that are part of the curriculum as defined by the state educational agency, and could not be reimbursed if children were off-site for extracurricular events. So this memo does provide clarification on providing meals to be consumed off-site and serving meals to children in work-study programs. So if you have something similar to this going on, please take the time to read this memo to clarify if this is something that you need to discuss with us further. All right, the next memo is on another USDA memo, and it's on guidance on fees for electronic payment services in school meal programs. So the thing to note about with this one is that this memo rescinds effective immediately the memo that came out in November of 2024 about the fees for electronic payment services and school meals. That was the memo that was saying that if you're charging fees for online payments that by 27-28 school year, you could not charge students that were free or reduced. This memo rescinds that memo. So what this memo is saying is that it provides revised guidance for school food authorities participating in school meal programs regarding fees charged to families that use electronic payment services to add money to school meal accounts. So what this memo is saying is that it's reminding school food authorities that they must offer a free and accessible method for all families to add money to school meal accounts. This memo also provides requirements for fees for electronic payment services and best practices and strategies. So the thing to note here is if your system has a way for parents to put student money on their student's account without having to pay a fee, you're in compliance. However, if you are a system that only takes fees or payments by, let's say, a software system that charges a fee to the parent, then you need to figure out a way to have an option for a parent to come and put money on their account for free, whether it's accepting cash, accepting checks. I know we have a lot of systems that are now going cashless. So just make sure you are finding a way for parents to be able to put money on their child's account without having to pay a fee. If the district wants to pay the fee, that is also fine. So again, go through this memo, make sure you have everything, all the correct information. So if you need to have a discussion potentially with your school district of how you're going to be in compliance, refer back to this memo. All right, average meal cost guidance. I see somebody in the chat is asking for it. We do not have an average meal cost tool. We are not requiring an average meal cost tool anymore. Basically, where this came from is when we reached out to USDA, they told us we were actually doing more than what we needed to do and that we're making things too complicated. And we reached out to other state agencies as well and received the same answer. So this memo the purpose of this memo was to assist SFAs in calculating the average meal costs. So average meal costs, we have it calculated each year and reported on the Schedule A on the annual application. So in previous years, the average meal cost tool calculations included your total expenses, which sometimes kind of skewed the numbers, resulting in a higher average meal cost for many SFAs. So what we did was, based off of what other states were doing, for a more accurate meal cost, and this is actually more of an average plate cost, the formula that we use to calculate the average meal cost will now include just your total food cost, your total commodities used, and then the total number of meals served. So on the Schedule A and the application, the system actually will help it calculate the average meal cost by pulling your numbers from your claims and pulling the numbers entered into the income and expense report. So if you enter in your numbers on the income and expense report, our computer system will generate an average meal cost for you because it will also pull those total meals served from the claim. The only thing you have to remember is that your non-program and adult meals must exceed the value of, so in other words, you have to charge your non-program meals and your adult meals higher than your average meal costs. We've had a lot of questions about whether they can do it the old way. You are totally welcome to do the old average meal costs. We understand that there is a big difference between the new calculation and the old calculation, the old calculation, you will have a higher meal cost. The newer calculation, you will have a lower meal cost. However, you do not have to change your prices if you don't want to, as long as what you're using as your average meal cost, that you are charging your adult meals and your non-program meals higher than what you are using as your average meal cost. All right, another important memo, we mentioned that we've been trying to get some additional trainings for directors, and we received approval from ICN to offer a financial management course for school nutrition directors. So we basically partnered with ICN for them to come to give an 8-hour course. This session will provide training on management of finances and other resources as the foundation for nutrition integrity and quality of meals in school nutrition programs. Listed a few things of the topics that included, such as the importance of financial management and a lot of other things listed here. It will be in person on September 23rd. It will be from 8 to 5, excuse me, at Pennington, at the conference center at Pennington. There will be a registration cost of $30. Lunch will be provided. However, the space is limited to 40 attendees. So if you think that this is something that you want to attend, please go on Louisiana Fit Kids and register for this training. The one thing about this training is you must pre-register. You cannot register the day of or show up of the day of, because I'm going to tell you, this is probably going to fill up quickly. So make sure that you register. We can only take 40 people. Another thing that I would like, if you think that you will be interested and want to take this training, to register early rather than later, because when they're going to check back with me, I think 4 to 6 weeks out, and they have to have a minimum of 25 people registered at that time to ensure that they can still hold that class. So again, I ask that you go and register for this class as soon as possible. I do not want them to cancel the class on us. So this memo, SFS 25-74, is about the cost price analysis. So this is just basically a reminder that the cost price analysis is required for all procurements above the simplified acquisition threshold. So all formal procurements, including invitation for bids and RFPs, must include a cost price analysis. So why must you do a cost price analysis? Why must it be conducted? So number one, it's in federal regulations. Number two, it helps the SFA ensure the proposed price is fair and reasonable, maximizing the value of federal funds. And number three, it helps identify inflated prices or unnecessary costs, preventing waste of resources. And finally, it ensures all vendors are evaluated on a level playing field based on price and other relevant factors. So prior year cost records can be utilized to demonstrate the value of purchases for products or services in the cost price analysis. USDA strongly advises the inclusion of this cost estimate within your solicitation. So here are some methods that can be used to determine a cost analysis. So before soliciting your bids, create an independent estimate of the cost of goods or services. You can review previous cost estimates for similar projects to establish a ballpark estimate. You can analyze the current market prices for the goods or services being procured and review prior year expenditures to make minor adjustments based on CPI and other factors. And the reason why we put out this memo is because this missing, like a lot of the reviews we did this year, it was a common finding that there was no cost price analysis done. So make sure you do it and make sure you maintain the documentation along with all of your other procurement documents. Okay, reimbursement rates. We put the Federal Register in a memo and we blasted it out to SFA. So here are some snippets from that Federal Register for reimbursement rates for NSLP, school breakfast, and after-school snacks. So for national school lunch, you will use one of the two columns that are circled in blue here. You're either going to be less than 60% free and reduced plus the 9 cents, or you're going to be 60% or more free and reduced plus the 9 cents. The 9 cents is that menu certification, which includes everyone in Louisiana. So we get this question every year. Please note that Louisiana is not able to receive or use the maximum rate of reimbursement, and we verify this with USDA. So again, you're going to use one of the two columns. If you are a high free and reduced, so more than 60%, you're using the column 60% or more plus the 9 cents. And then if you are lower end, you will be using the less than 60%. For school breakfast, you will either use non-severe need or severe need based on what your sites qualify for. And the same thing for after-school snack, you will use the appropriate reimbursement rate that the site qualifies for. I have both the website notice and the Federal Register notice linked on this slide. The last memo is about the June SNAP, TANF, and Medicaid free lunch and Medicaid reduced lunch files. Those files have been loaded into eScholar. Districts, both public and non-public, should first submit their students to eScholar Person ID for ID assignment before they run their own direct match. And if you ever need assistance with this, you can always email Jane. All right, let's talk about some upcoming trainings. So again, today is the monthly call for August. On August 19th, we will have a training on claims for reimbursement. The September monthly call will be on September 2nd. And then on September 16th will be on verification, the first part of verification. And then what we just talked about on September 23rd will be the in-person ICN Financial Management Directors Training. Most of these trainings are posted on Louisiana Fit Kits approximately 1 month in advance. However, the ICN Financial Management Training has already been posted. We also have the civil rights and offer versus serve trainings available. It's both the slides and recordings. So if an SFA wants to use these at your back to school trainings, you can play these for your staff if you need to do something for civil rights and offer versus serve still. We went over this already. This is more information about the financial management course that's being held on September 23rd. Again, please try to register for this as soon as possible. This is another thing that we got emailed about. The Culinary Institute of Child Nutrition has an upcoming webinar entitled How to Incorporate Fresh Produce into Scratch Cooking. That will actually take place this week on August 7th at 2 p.m. It actually is going to talk about potential of local procurement and school meal programs, highlighting real-life examples from schools that are successfully incorporating fresh produce into scratch cooking. It also is going to offer some guidance on maximizing the use of DoD Fresh for procuring fresh produce, as well as introduce some ICN resources that support produce safety and staff training. A little bit about the equipment grant. So there were some funds left over of the 2024 equipment grant first allocation. So we were able to award a second allocation, and those emails were sent out to authorized representatives on June 13th. Again, for this one, the August 13th is the due date, so that is coming up soon. So make sure if you receive the second allocation for the 2024 equipment grant that you are sending in those purchase orders and our invoice and sending that requesting that funding on the website. So if you have any questions, you can email or call Stacy Griffin. All right, let's talk about Louisiana Tray of the Week. This is something that Louisiana Team Nutrition is starting. It's called Louisiana Tray of the Week campaign. It's going to run from August 18th of this year through May 15th of next year. And it's a way to recognize and celebrate school nutrition staff by showcasing the quality, creativity, and appeal of meals served to students. It's also a way to boost community pride and improve public perception of school meals. So what do you need to do to take part in this campaign? Basically, all you need to do is submit your tray photos to Louisiana Fit Kids. The link on the top of the slide, it gives you the email to Louisiana Fit Kids, or you can email Kathy Carmichael. Make sure your tray meets the USDA meal pattern requirements by clearly showing all the components being offered. Include a short description of the menu items, indicate the school where the meal was served, and provide the date of the meal service. As a reminder, the food should be attractively plated on the tray and photographed. The tray must be an accurate representation of your students' selected or what they could select. So on this slide is information of what the website is going to look like for the Tray of the Week campaign. I believe it's supposed to be posted sometime this week. Schools and districts across Louisiana are invited to participate, and each week the selected trays will be featured on Louisiana Fit Kids social media platforms. So on this slide is some tips when you're photographing your trays, you want to make sure you're not too close or too high, and just what you need to do to have that perfect angle and height when you're going to submit your pictures. So here are some engagement opportunities when you're participating in this Louisiana Tray of the Week campaign. So participation in the campaign can garner student, parent, and community engagement for your school meal program and engage your staff. All winning schools will receive a Louisiana Tray of the Week certificate, a feature in Louisiana Fit Kids website, and a highlight on their social media platforms. Participation provides the opportunity to highlight your school nutrition program to your community and school and district level administration. So at the end of the 25-26 school year, a panel of Louisiana school nutrition leaders will vote on the best trays of the year, and the winning schools will be presented with an award. So if this is something that is of interest to you, please make sure you participate in this Louisiana Tray of the Week campaign. So with that, I will look in the chat to see if we have any questions. As always, though, you can contact us at the main number or the main email address, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. Let me check the chat real quick. So again, we had a question about the average meal cost. We will not be posting a 25-26 average meal cost tool. You can refer to the average meal cost memo. The easiest way to, somebody was asking about how to request technical assistance. The easiest way to request technical assistance is to contact us at the general email address, the childnutritionprograms@la.gov, and just let us know what you're needing technical assistance in, and we can set up a visit, or you can call us and we can discuss it as well. The reimbursement rates have been posted to the CNP website. They were posted on July 24th. I am not seeing anything else in the chat at the moment. All right, I'm not seeing anything else in the chat, but again, if you need anything, contact us at the number on the screen, 225-342-9661, or email us at childnutritionprograms@la.gov, and we'll be happy to help you. I hope everyone has an easy or as smooth of a start of the school year as possible. Again, if you need us help with anything, please reach out to us, and we'll be more than happy to help you. Thank you, everyone.